Hi everyone, welcome to Curse 20, the online video diary of a bunch of unprofessional D&D players.
This is the first video in a series that we are calling D&D Differences and Disagreements. My name is David, and this is Cody.
Welcome everybody. This video series is going to be about two different ways that we think you can play D&D. And our first episode is going to be about spell slots, which I think are a perfectly acceptable way to play a magic user, versus spell points.
Which I think are an awesome alternative to the standard norm of spell slots, which can sometimes get a little bit boring.
Okay, I think most everybody knows what spell slots are. So why don't you go ahead and kind of explain spell points?
So, spell points are something very similar to spell slots. They are a resource that you get that you expend in order to cast your spells. The difference in the way that they work is that you are given a pool of points. This pool of points you can then use to spend in any way that you see fit, really. You're given the typical spell slots you'd normally be given access to. Each spell slot is worth a certain amount of spell points. You just choose however many spell points you wish to expend and use those.
Okay, do you want to go ahead and so how many does the book tell you how many spell points are worth each spell slots? I think it's like what is it like 13 points for a ninth level spell and like 3 points for like a first level spell, and then there's like a variety in
Exactly.
between.
Everything varies in between. I think we've got the book we can look
Yeah,
up here.
let me just
Um,
pull it up. It was on page 288. Let me just find it real quick. Yeah, right here. So like a first is 4 spell points, and then six, four, and then oh wow, that's a drastic from second to third is 6 spell points to 14.
that is, yeah, for the level cast there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So to me, they do the same thing as spell slots, and spell slots are just easier to keep track of. And I feel like spell points could drag the game down. Like it could make combat slower or even role playing slower if you're not necessarily used to them, or you're having to do all this math to figure out how many you have left. Like the tracking and the upkeep seems more to me than just having a set amount of blocks that you check off during the day.
It's definitely an option that's going to be meant for more of an experienced player who is looking for a little bit more of a challenge. I wouldn't even call it a challenge, just a slightly different way to play. It's going to be a little bit more on the player side to keep track of and know what you're going to be doing so that you don't drag down the game. Let's all be honest, there's plenty of time between rounds where we all have that we can spend looking at those
Yes,
numbers.
but you already have. I'm sorry to cut you off. In spell slots, you already have to wait forever for like a wizard to figure out what he's gonna do, even with all the time between rounds.
But that math isn't going to then complicate it further. You're going to get that math done in the same amount of time, and then you're still going to be held up guessing if you want to cast Fireball, which we all know the answer is yes.
And if you're a warlock, you're gonna cast Eldritch Blast. So do you think? Okay, so how would you use spell points for a warlock when they only get like 3 or 4 spells for the day?
Well, I believe that the rules as written are that spell points are to be used by clerics, druids, sorcerers, and wizards.
Oh,
Um, Warlocks, as we all know, do get their packed spells slots, so those do work differently. They wouldn't work on that.
that makes sense. To be fair, everybody, he knows the mechanics behind the game a little bit better than I do. So it's hard to argue like rules with him when he has them all pretty much memorized. It's really hard.
I've just read the book a few times, or I wouldn't even say read the whole book. I've read parts of the book, and I just remember certain things about the things I like because they're the things I like.
Okay, so why would you want? I get that do you think you get more variety from the spell points? Like, do you what like why does it appeal to you?
I really like the flexibility that you get being able to spend your slots on anything that you wish. If I want to cast 8 fireballs in a day and I've got the spell points to do it, I think I should be able to cast 8 fireballs in a day. If that means that I get to cast no sixth level spells or fifth level spells.
Okay, so let's talk about this. You brought up 6 level spells and points. The book says for this alternate rule that you can only cast using spell points a 6 level or higher spell once a day. That's how I read it.
Now, the rules do get a little bit worded confusingly if we bring the book out here and read it. I'll kind of leave this up for some discussion in the comments as well. I think I also agree in the way that it's written that you'd only get one sixth level spell. So the way it's written is that spells of sixth level and higher are particularly taxing to cast. You can use spell points to create one spell slot of level sixth or higher. You can't create another slot of the same level until you finish a long rest. So the way I'm reading that is you can create that spell slot and use it, and then you cannot create another spell slot of that same level.
But you could use 1 6, 1 7, 1 8, and 1 9 throughout the day because it
If
says
you have as
the
a character unlocked those level spells.
yes,
But in effect, once you get to the end of there, they almost act as warlock spell slots
where you're
where you're
casting.
only getting the one. So it is a little bit different. And I will admit that for it to work for me, I think I would ask to homebrew something where maybe you get a couple. I can understand when you get to 20th level, you've got 133 spell points, and a ninth level spell costs 13 points.
Yes, where
So
you're gonna cast wish 9 times in a session.
I can understand how that can be a little bit overpowered, and maybe there's some throttling back, but I still think there's some room where maybe something can be worked out
Okay,
with
so
your DM.
let's put a little check on my side of the box. If you're already having to homebrew the rule isn't as good as just using spell slots.
That's definitely a point that I'll have to give there. I won't argue that if you're having to homebrew the homebrew, then well, it's not homebrew. If you're having to homebrew the optional rule, then maybe it's not the best optional rule. But like I said, this is kind of more for experienced players that have just grown a little bit bored with the normal way.
And so if you're an experienced player, you're probably with a quote unquote experienced DM, and you've probably been with people who are playing a long time. So your DM should be able to figure out how to balance how many times you can use your spell
Absolutely.
points. Yeah, I get that. That I mean, it makes sense, and it does. I will concede that just checking off the box, like I used the first level spell this time, it gets repetitive and it can get boring. And I don't even play magic users that much. I'm a melee based guy. They're simple. And it's like when I DM, I have to be all these complicated things. So when I play, I like to just hit things with my hammer. um, uh, Side question for you. I think in a spell point system, I think a cantrip should cost spell points. I think cantrips should cost you something. It is insane to me that you can cast spells like fucking Ice Blast and not cost you anything. Or Ray of Frost, Ray of Frost.
Then I think at that point maybe there needs to be a differentiation between damage dealing cantrips and cantrips like light and prestidigitation because there's no way in any world that those should cost any resource
What are you
whatsoever.
talking about? You don't think it
I
would
cleaned my clothes. Oh gee, what is
with
that?
magic? Okay, but it would physically cost you something to physically clean your clothes.
Yeah, you know
So
what it cost me? The time to study the spell.
no, no, dude. Okay, let's like okay. If you're a boxer, say you're Canelo Alvarez. Alvarez, if you throw a jab, that still costs energy, even though that's the simplest punch you could throw in boxing.
Yeah, but you can throw that 100 times
But it still
without a
costs
doubt.
you 100 times, right? So shouldn't a cantrip cost you something?
No, not
Or
in
should
any
you be
way,
able to
shape, or
cast a
form.
cantrip
Because
4 times a day before it starts
if
costing
he
you
throws
something?
100 jabs and then takes a 10-minute break, could he throw another 100 jabs?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I doubt.
Y-
Okay.
yes. Like, yes. It's the least amount of energy being required to do a magic act. Now, do they get a little OP towards the end of the game? Maybe. Maybe things like Eldritch Blast don't need to be doing 40 damage on average at level 17. That's a little crazy
I
for a
will
cantrip.
I will concede though, a level 17 character is somebody who has put in the time practicing their craft. So I guess scaling up a little bit makes sense, but the cost should stay the same. If it costs you 1 spell point to cast an Eldritch Blast at level 1 that does 5 points of damage, it should still only cost you 1 spell point to cast it at level 17 that done 40 points of damage, but it's still costing you something, even if that something is relatively less based off your level.
I still think that a cantrip is a cantrip. It's a free at will power. It is something that is the most basic essence of what magic is, and it's the first things you learn. It's Aloha Mora. It's unlocking a lock. It's the basic stuff that you can just do over and over.
Okay, but even like, okay, you go to Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf is talking to the butterfly on top of the tower, it costs him something. He gets tired, from just using magic to tell the butterfly to go get the eagles.
Did he mark off the first level spell slot for that? Because I don't remember seeing that happen. I don't. I didn't see him expend a component or anything there. So
I can't. I don't have anything to argue
like
against that.
thematically, there's the components you're expending, and
Okay, but when was the
as I've
last
said
time a
before, the
D?
time you spent learning the spell.
Okay, okay. When was the last time a DM was so harsh on you to tell you and have you mark off components for a spell, or say, did you use your long rest to study that new spell?
I'm pretty sure the last time I tried to use Revivify, I was told it's not gonna just be as simple as casting Revivify.
But you're in Curse of Strahd where there's all these dark powers and stuff, and Revivify is a light spell, and like, yeah, that's bringing somebody back from the dead should cost something. But when was the last time that DM made you use components when you cast like Toll of the Dead?
I don't know. But it still doesn't mean that the components aren't being used thematically by my character, even if I, the player, am not tracking it. It is still part of the essence.
That is all fair enough. Do you have any other thoughts on the subject?
Yes, in closing, I think that I'm right. And that's the final word.
I know that I'm right. So there's that.
Well, I guess DMs get the final say.
Everybody, thank you for watching. This is Curse 20s, and keep a lookout for more videos. Hi, everyone. Thank you for watching another episode of Curse 20. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell button to keep up to date with future videos. Also, keep a lookout for our future Twitch channel. Have a good night and happy rolling.